Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another review, and today we're taking a look at the Neca Godzilla 2014. Now I will say, this is the original release that came out 6 years ago. Right now there's a newer version. I don't have that version. I know it comes in the big square boxes, and I think it's pretty much the same, but it has a different paint scheme. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the same. Now, on to this guy. For being a 6-year-old figure, this guy is still pretty incredible. He's one of my favorite figures, but I don't really use him that much or mess around with him that much. He's always kind of sitting in the back. But he is genuinely one of my favorite figures. That I'm trying to put what's it called? Nostalgia aside, because he's genuinely a good figure. I lost my train of thought. Looks wise, he's pretty much straight out of the film. I mean, you're not gonna get much closer than this, especially with the monster arts that came out. The monster arts looks pretty horrendous. And articulation wise, this guy is, I'd say, pretty comparable to even newer NECA figures that were released. He's even a little bit better than my 2019 reissue, I would go as far as to say. And we'll get into why I say the reissue in a little bit later on. But yeah, looks wise, I'd say he's pretty much spot on. Paint wise, he's pretty good. I've never felt the need to paint him, because I think the colors already are pretty nicely done. Even the eyes and the teeth, which is an issue the 2019 figure had, but we'll talk about him later. Now, articulation. You can look up a fair bit, not entirely, but I'd say that's enough. He can look down some. Again, not too much, but he doesn't really need to look down all that much more. Side to side he can do, kinda sorta. Oh wow, that's a lot farther than to the right. Again, head and neck are on a ball joint, so they can rotate all the way if you want. Arms go out about that far. It could have been a bit better. I think it's a bit better on the 2019. You got an elbow joint about 90 degrees. You got rotation. You got rotation here too. You got rotation at the arm. I mean the hand. I believe there's another joint that lets it go up and down, but not all that much. Now, the legs are actually pretty impressive. Oh, okay. I did not mean to pop that off. Hopefully that goes in just as easy as it came out. Oh no, we're gonna have some trouble on our hands. Okay, now we're good. It went back on. Okay. The legs can go out a pretty fair amount. They can bend, as you can see. They're fairly bent right now. Fairly bent down right now. They can go. Oh, I think I just popped it back in. It wasn't properly popping in. Oh wow, this leg is really tight. They can strain out a fair bit. I'd say a little too much. There, that looks a bit better. Not really. They can go again out, as you can see. They can go in and like up, kind of weird. That's on both, so both are pretty well articulated, if I do say so. His feet are actually pretty well articulated too. They're on a ball joint. That's as far back as you're gonna get. That's as far forward, and he's got a pretty good pivot. Not much inward pivot, but outward pivot. Let me get his leg back on. Not on, just in an appropriate position. I like to keep his legs kind of like bent back, and then this kind of going forward. That's just how I like to display him. Oh, did I mention he's got a waist joint? It's not the greatest. He doesn't get much of a crunch. he doesn't really, oh wow, actually, he goes back a fair bit. So yeah, never mind that. Let me adjust his tail so we can get like a full height. Yeah, I'd say he maybe got a little bit taller from that. Not much, but enough, I guess. Tail, he's got a ball joint here in this section, then here, then here, then from here it's a bendy wire. You know, considering this thing is 6 years old, it's held up pretty well. And then here is a full bend using only the ball joints. You can do the same for the other side. So yeah, I'm not gonna bend the tail joint because you don't really need to, like, unless you're trying to get it to be all the way on the floor. Which I don't think 2014 really did. I think he always kind of had it upwards. Again, I've had this thing for 6 years and with no rough housing or anything. Well, no, I won't lie. I think I threw this quite around when I was younger. But it's held up 6 years. Pretty much is what I was trying to say. So yeah, that's his articulation. He doesn't have any accessories, and I don't think the reissue does either. And Neca never made an atomic version of this guy, so he does not. He might be able to use the... actually, maybe not. His mouth doesn't really open all that wide, which I completely forgot to cover. That's as wide as it goes. So I don't think you can use the beam for the Godzilla 2019. I don't think I have it here either. I probably should have grabbed it. So yeah, that's a big whoopsie on my part. But moving on to size comparisons. Here he is with the SH Monster as King Kong, just because Godzilla vs. Kong is coming up. If you want an articulated King Kong, this is probably the best option until SH Monster Arts makes a King Kong for Godzilla vs. Kong, if they do. There is the NECA figure, but that one is really huge. Like, I think it stands at 8 inches tall, and this guy I'd say is about 6, so he's going to be a whole 2 inches taller. So I'd say maybe about here. So unless you want a really big Kong to go with your Godzilla, this would be the best option. Best option, because this guy isn't really available anymore. But that I talked about that in my review of this guy, so go check that out. And next up, here he is with the Neca Godzilla 2019 figure. Now, this is where we gotta talk. This is the first release of this figure. So, the first release versions of the NECA 2019 figures did not have the best articulation. This one I've modified some. I've modified some in the head and neck area, and then this I achieved just by heating it up and pushing it far back as I could. And even then, with heating it up and everything, it's not the most posable figure. It's quite hard to pose sometimes, and it's not very articulate. The range is limited, is what I should say. And I believe they're the same size, same height, which this figure, 2019 is supposed to be taller, so I mean what you can do to achieve this is just bring his legs forward a bit, and then bring his torso down some, and there you go. You got a slightly shorter Godzilla 2014. Here, let me set them face to face. So yeah, I mean, that works. That works for me anyways. If you're okay with it, then you're okay with it. And here he is. I gotta move Kong so I don't put my Godzilla figure on top of him, because Kong is kind of fragile. With the reissue of the NECA 2019 figure, which this figure is a lot more posable than the original. But in the legs, in the leg area, I'd say this guy wins. Like, I don't think I can quite get the same articulation out of him in the leg area, especially the knees. I don't know if that's just a case of having to heat him up and try to get the joints moving, which I did do with my first release, and it kind of worked, kind of didn't. But he's nowhere as close as the range that this guy has. Again, what was I gonna say again? Today's not a good day. It really comes down to personal preference, and again, this is a 6-year-old figure. I'm not sure what the new ones are like, so it is what it is. Get you out of here, and that's it for comparisons. Now, closing thoughts. If you want a Godzilla 2014 figure that is articulated and that looks accurate, hands down, go for this guy. The Monster Arts, he's not that great looking, face-wise, and he had quite a few QC issues, quality control. Meanwhile, this guy, he's gonna scale pretty nicely with your figures. He's not as articulated as the Monster Arts, obviously, I guess, but the articulation that he does have is pretty great. Legs especially. The waist kind of suffers. On the reissues, it probably won't be too limited, because NECA has since, used different types of plastic and such, so there's a chance that the reissue is better. Same thing with the arms not going out as far. Now, Godzilla in the film, I don't think he really brought his arms much higher than this, and you can always rotate it. So yeah, pick this guy up if you're debating whether you get the Monster Arts or the NECA. Go for the NECA. Like, it'll be $25, while the Monster Arts is probably gonna be over 100, and it's gonna have bad eye paint, bad teeth paint, loose joints, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, that has been closing thoughts. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe, do all those wonderful things you guys do, and peace.